Hi, I'm Mr. Robertson. I'm the Director of Art at Trinity. I've put together a monoprinting lesson in the box for you. I'm going to go through a few different ways that you can use this with your classes at school, and it can be used for all different age groups and for all different projects. The basic things that you're all going to need then from our lesson in the box, we've got one of these. It's a laminated piece of paper with an A4 border in it, so each student is going to need one of those. We're going to need a roller like this, or a brayer. It has a nice little edge on there, so we can always put it that way up as well once this is dirty, and you need an inking tray. I'm going to start by putting some ink into this tray. We don't need loads and loads of ink. This is printing ink, so it dries a bit slower than paint normally would, and we don't need to put too much in, otherwise you start to get a really big mess. So I'm putting a small amount in to begin with, and then if I find that that's not enough, I can always add more. So there's a small amount for me for the moment. I'm now going to take my roller, and I'm going to try and get a nice even coverage of ink on my roller here. You hear that sticky sound? That's always good. I always talk to the students about the right kinds of sounds and textures when making work. Now I'm going to take that. This border that I put in here is an A4, okay, so it's perfect for working on A4. It means that if the kids keep the ink within this boundary and then put their piece of paper, they're less likely to get it on themselves or on their uniform. So I'm going to roll on here, and you can see that the ink's starting to go on here. Now, when I do this, again, I always talk to students about me doing it in different directions. So I don't just come along and just do this the whole time, although you can definitely to start off, but I would look to change directions, and that helps you spread the ink and get a more even coverage on here. Things that you want to avoid on here, okay? If you have any big blobs of ink, instead of getting a nice flat smooth texture, you'll see it looks a bit like custard skin when it goes a bit cold. You want to avoid that, you want to get rid of that. So we're going to smooth that out, and again, with the students, you want to say to them, look, listen to the sound that this makes. There's a nice sort of tacky sound on there, and that's really what they're looking for, and that's when they know they've got something good. Now a little bit more ink. Again, you don't have to do this absolutely perfect. So some people might worry that they haven't gone exactly to those edges. That's going to be okay, okay? So don't let them worry too much about that. So that's done. So now I can put my tray and my roller away. I can put it over here. Again, if you then pass it on to the next student, they can do that too. And at any point if they need to put it on the table, just put it that way up. It'll help keep your tables and the mess down a little bit. Okay, so now I've got this. There are several different ways that we can approach monoprinting. We can use a observational drawing method, so they can have an object in front of them, they can sketch it, or maybe they can draw something imaginatively, or we can also use an image and they can do a tracing. And both of these processes are something that I use with our Year 6 or our junior form and up, depending on what we need to do. So what I'm going to do is this. I've got my inky board there. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some photocopy paper, okay, so some less expensive paper than cartridge paper. I'm going to pop it on top of here, and then I'm going to press it and I'm going to rub. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to blot the excess ink off, because I just don't want too much ink on there. So if I peel that one off, we can see that it's transferred on there, so I've applied pressure and the ink is transferred. Now you can do great things with this as well, so it doesn't necessarily have to go in a bin. You could keep that for later and use it for a different task. You can use it for collage, all kinds of things. So hopefully what I'm now hoping is I've got a good consistency of ink on here, and I'm going to take a nice bit of cartridge paper and I'm going to apply that over the top there. Okay, so for the first one it was like a drawing from observation, so you might have an object. So for the moment I've got a mahogany pod here, and then I'm going to sketch. Now what I also show the students when I introduce this to them is the idea of pressure and how much pressure you apply. It's very similar to drawing. So I'm going to do a little tonal shading here. So I press down really hard, and then I'm going to start to lift my pressure off, so I'm looking for some gradiated tone, and we'll see if that actually transfers into the print. Now there could be a point where if you don't apply enough pressure, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to transfer, and we kind of want to avoid that. So I started to sketch there, and then I would probably suggest that you start by sketching your form, and maybe, like you normally would to make a good drawing, you might want to start by sketching quite lightly because you can make mistakes. By sketching lightly, you're thinking about the shape. You might be thinking about where you place things, but you've also got the opportunity to cut back and go, okay, so this bit is actually not quite right. Once you're happy with that sketch, then I might go, okay, I'm going to firm some of these lines up. I'm going to say that this is a really good line. I think that is in the right place. So I'm going to sketch that on there. Again, this bit over here I think is alright. I'm going to start to add that on too, press a bit firmer. Again, think about the different textures and things that are happening on there. Am I always going to draw with a fine tip on my pencil, or am I going to hold it on the side and start thinking about some bigger marks that I can make so I can start to work in bigger areas much quicker? Again, this is really great to show your students and get your students to think about different ways to approach their mark making, but also ways that will help sort of speed it up and build their confidence as well. So I'm going to add some tone in on this area over here. Again, I can add more and more tone and build this into a really nice drawing, but for the moment I'll stop there. So I've got my sketch here, I've got my tonal gradient here, we've thought about pressure and how much pressure to apply. We've also got different types of marks. And when I peel this off, I'm hoping it looks the way that I thought it might. So let's peel that one off, and there we go. We can see that my drawing has transferred. And again, on here you can see it's gone really dark, and it has worked. When I've released pressure, it started to get finer and finer. Now you'll notice there's also some blotches that are appearing around here. I generally say that's okay, it adds texture and character to the work, but it can also be that when I'm drawing, I'm applying pressure with my hand and I'm rubbing the surface, and that's transferring too. So often we'll then talk with students about, okay, so how can we avoid that if we want to? So that's one example, okay? So that's drawing from observation, like this. You can then do exactly the same thing. So I'd ink this up, I'd get that back the way that I wanted it, and then I'd pop my piece of paper on it. I'm going to turn it portrait this time, because I've got a portrait photo. Now, your photos could be anything, as I said. It really depends on your project and the way that you want to use monoprinting. For the moment, our junior form look at natural forms. So I'm going to take this, which is a poppy, and I'm going to pop it on top here. Now, I've forgotten something. I've forgotten that I need masking tape. At this point, what I would do is put a bit of masking tape on here to hold this image on top of the cartridge paper so it doesn't slide around. So once you've got your image, it's then a case of tracing. Okay? So tracing is great, because if you trace, it means that the students don't have to worry about shape, they don't have to worry about proportion, they've got all that information in front of them, and it can make them feel really good because quite quickly they can get a realistic drawing. Now if you want to up the challenge of this task, then the challenge really becomes about them then focusing in on things like texture and tone. So do they need to add some stippling in areas? Do they need to work much darker? Now again, if they've got masking tape on here, what I'd also say is, look, if I put my masking tape on this side, I can kind of have little cheater points, and I can peel it back and I can have a look and see if my marks are transferring. I can also see if there are gaps too, and that will help me decide how to improve it. So this is my trace, and I'll show you some examples here. So this is the same object drawn by one of our Year 6 students, so one of our junior form students. So, you know, shape is all there, perfect, really happy with that, and he's really started to consider the shadows, started to consider the detail, everything else that's happening in there. It allows them to focus on that. And again, it doesn't have to be a seed pod, it can be whatever it is that you want. Here's another example, slightly bigger. So this is an A3 sheet. I've bounded it off, as I said, to avoid mess. But I've also had our Year 7s, they were looking at different sea creatures, and they were having a go on an A3 scale. Now with a monoprint, we could stop here, or we could then give it back to them. They can work back into it using different materials. They can like build colour into it if they want to, or they can build more tone and pencil. That's another thing that you can do. The last one I'll show you is this. So if I take this away, the last approach is sort of similar to our blotting paper. Okay, so you want to get your ink. I might need a bit more ink this time, so I'm going to pop a little bit more ink on here. Grab my ink, I'm going to ink this up, and there are different coloured inks in the lesson in the box, so up to you, you decide which colours you would like them to use. Definitely have a go at this yourself, have a go, see what you think. So the first and last one that I'll show you is this, so I've inked that up. Now instead of putting my paper on and drawing on that, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go around and going to find some different objects that I've got. I've got some different sort of mark making tools. They might be like art specific ones, could be as much as like a grouting tool. You can use forks, you can use combs. These are dirty because they come out of ceramics. We use them for all sorts of things. They're always good and useful. Could be a paintbrush, could be a stick, could be anything. Okay, in fact the paintbrush, if I start to draw in here, I'm going to get some nice paintbrushy marks. But I could also turn my paintbrush over, and I could also start to draw straight away like this. Okay? And as I'm drawing, you can see that I'm actually removing some of that ink. Again, I'm going to take this one. I really like some of these marks that you can make with these tools here, especially if you rotate them. Something from that. Let's put a little bit of a hairbrush in there, or a comb. Different types of combs. Again, just like a little stick, you can draw whatever it is that you would like to draw on there. Once you've got your inky plate, okay, and this can be as simple as just having an experiment with mark making. You can take that, you take your piece of paper. I'm going to put my piece of paper on top. Now if you have a clean roller, you can now roll over the top and apply pressure. I've forgotten a roller too, so I'm going to have to use my hand. So I'm going to apply my pressure like this and rub all over that paper, and then I should get those lovely marks transferred on here. Now the firmer and harder I can press, which is why a roller is really good, it means that I'll probably get an even black background, whereas at this point it's likely to be a little bit patchy. But here we go. And there's my mark making. So you can make something really exciting doing that too. Now with this thing, we could use it for lots of things. That could be the end product. You could decide actually to then start to cut it into different shapes and to collage it, or to make silhouettes for pots or something like that. That's really up to you and depends what you think would work for you. So those are the 3 different methods that I'm showing you today, and go and have fun. See what you can do with it.